John O'Keefe's brother Paul and other O'Keefe family members are also waiting at the courthouse. They have not publicly spoken since the start of the trial. Late today, I spoke with John O'Keefe's brother Paul O'Keefe, and he tells me that he and his family were gathered at a nearby location here in Dedham today when, according to Paul O'Keefe, about 25 to 30 people showed up outside, many of them wearing pink, he said. And he says they started taking pictures and video of their family. He says the O'Keefe family felt harassed and intimidated.
We figured it out as soon as she left the house that day when she came over. We didn't talk to any investigators, state police, nobody. You know, my mother had said, "Do you think she has something to do with this?" And I said, "We're not going to think like that." Went outside to the driveway to look at her car, and her car was gone. It was a blizzard. I knew what the driving conditions were like coming from the hospital to Canton, and I knew that they were going back to Dighton, which was a much further drive, so we put it together pretty quickly.
Karen Reed left the courthouse after posting bail.
I am disappointed in the rush to judgment against my client.
Reed was in a 2-year relationship with the officer. Last Friday night, say prosecutors, the couple went to 2 bars in Canton before being invited to an after party at this Canton home. Prosecutors say she dropped O'Keefe off and left because she was having stomach issues.
She stated that she dropped the victim off, she made a 3-point turn in the street and left, did not see the victim enter the house. She indicated that she first observed the broken taillight in the morning and did not know how she broke it.
Prosecutors say when O'Keefe didn't return home, Reed repeatedly texted him and asked 2 friends to return to the house in Canton. They discovered his body at the height of the blizzard near a fire hydrant, skull fractured, severe cuts to his arms, eyes swollen shut, and suffering from hypothermia.
I think that there was a lot of political pressure on this district attorney's office to bring charges in light of the fact that a police officer was the victim here.
The alleged details unfolded in a courtroom packed with officers and members of 2 families visibly upset. O'Keefe was the guardian of a niece and nephew, while Reed is an adjunct professor at Bentley University. Do you want to say anything?
No comment.
Neither family would speak as they left, but the head of the Boston Police Department says they're all trying to process this tragedy.
Lose anybody, any member, and especially in circumstances like this, it's tough.
With most of the evidence hidden from the defense, the Commonwealth's case against Karen Reed was extremely thin. And from the start, she had no reason to flee. Because even without the results of our investigation, her defense was strong. And it was strong because it was based on innocence. By the time I got back to my office that afternoon, I had already begun to learn that this wasn't just a tragedy, and it wasn't just that my client had committed no crime. But shockingly at the time, I learned that somebody else did, in fact, commit a very heinous crime. A friend and colleague of Brian Albert's called me on February 2nd, 2022, only hours after my client was arraigned, and named Brian Albert and his nephew Colin Albert as potential suspects. That tip on day 1 of this case led us to do the investigation the Commonwealth did not do, the investigation they refused to do. And as my co-counsel has argued today, that investigation revealed that the Commonwealth's investigation was based on one lie after another. And the exposure of those lies is a major change circumstance which justifies lowering my client's bail to personal recognizance. Given the national publicity that this case has generated, which I submit will only intensify as we approach a trial date, my client is one of the most recognizable criminal defendants in America. Where on earth would she go, even if she wanted to go somewhere? But she's not going anywhere. Her family's here, her doctors are here, and given the strength of her defense, as illustrated by the changed circumstances we've discussed, she has every incentive to fight this case and no incentive to flee. She's made every court appearance and has invested herself 100% into this case, financially, emotionally, and intellectually. But if there's any concern at all, Your Honor, my client will dispel those concerns by turning in her passport. I have it. She's ready to give this to the probation department. She's ready to sign a waiver of rendition, any waiver of rendition the court would desire. So on this issue, she's really figuratively putting her money where her mouth is. Giving her passport and a waiver of rendition is far more valuable to this court in terms of assuring her appearance in court than $80,000 is. But that $80,000 is more valuable to her because she desperately needs it to defend herself. So for these reasons, Your Honor, I ask that you help us to level the playing field here. The Commonwealth has unlimited resources. My client does not. I ask that you release her on recognizance and give her the tools she needs to fight this case.
The Commonwealth just requests that the bail remain the same. There's no change in circumstances of the facts, and I use that term loosely, as Mr. Yannetti was recounting for the court. There is simply no evidence of Trooper Proctor having a close connection with the homeowners. There is simply no evidence on the February date. If the court were inclined, I would concur with surrendering a passport. I would concur with executing a waiver of rendition, and I would ask that there be an additional order. The defendant be ordered to remain alcohol-free, subject to random testing with a SCRAM device, based on the nature and circumstances and based on the indictment she faces in this court. Thank you.
We already, like I said, we put the pieces together on our own, and that just really solidified it.
Miss Peter was also the driving force for Mr. Carney's arrest for his alleged violation of a restraining order on February 26, 2024. Mr. Carney, who had been released from jail on February 23rd, 2024, announced the following evening on his Turtle Boy live show that he would be attending the February 26th Karen Reed hearing. A review of that communications between Ms. Catani and Ms. Peter demonstrates that they regularly watched and discussed Mr. Carney's live shows. It's funny reading their messages. When I'm live and on Turtle Club, they're just sitting back and forth, rage texting with each other. Like, can you believe what he just said? I hate him. If you search hate him in the data extraction, it comes up like 50 times. Like, it is just, she announces her motive the whole time. Hatred. Hate him. Hate him. And they just found each other. These two people who are just obsessed with me. And it's just like a match made in heaven. They were destined to be best friends. How about this? Several weeks earlier, in January of 2024, Miss Peter told Miss Catani that Paul O'Keefe, the brother of Boston police officer John O'Keefe, wanted to meet with her. And we have these in texts. Miss Catani excitedly responded, quote, Paul O'Keefe wants to talk to me, in all caps, like so excited. Like Paul O'Keefe wants to talk to little old me. Oh my goodness. So Krusty reaches out to her and says, Paul O'Keefe wants to talk to you. She's like, oh my God, Paul O'Keefe wants to talk to me? In April of 2024, this was at the hearing in which we were trying to get rid of the restraining order that she was abusing. In April of 2024, Ms. Catani, who had not attended any other Reed proceedings, testified that she went to the February 26, 2024 appearance at the personal invitation of Paul O'Keefe. And now you see what's happening here? We got a theory about this. I don't think she's lying, and I don't think Paul O'Keefe is lying. Mr. O'Keefe's communications with Mr. Carney contradict Ms. Catani. Remember I talked to Paul O'Keefe and he's like, what? I didn't invite her. Mr. O'Keefe denied inviting Ms. Catani to court. He told Mr. Carney that there was a, quote, miscommunication, but Ms. Catani didn't lie because she thought Mr. O'Keefe invited her. Mr. O'Keefe's explanation suggests that Miss Peter told Ms. Catani that Mr. O'Keefe wanted her to appear in court to entice Ms. Catani, who had an open restraining order against Mr. Carney, to attend. Again, think about this. She put the whole thing together. Krusty knows. Keep in mind, why is Krusty being charged in Stoughton? Because she didn't leave a courtroom when someone with an order shows up. She knows this. She's like, wait a minute. He's going to get out of jail on the 23rd, and he's going to go to the Karen Reed hearing. If we can, in Krusty's mind, she's thinking she's using the fake victim. She's just using her, and she doesn't give up. They're both, she's happy to be used, but she is using her. And so she's like, wait a minute. what if I get her to go? But how am I going to get her to go? How am I going to convince? Because that's a big ask, because you got to go in with the McAlberts, and you got to go through the gauntlet of free can't read people, and you are going to become a villain overnight. Like, none of you people knew who Lindsay Gattani was prior to this. Like, even when I was in jail, most of you were like, you didn't know much about her, right? So if I were her, I'd want to keep like a low profile as possible, right? That's not the way Krusty thinks. Krusty thinks like, how can I use this person? How can I exploit this person? So she tells her that she's going to, that Paul O'Keefe wants her there. And she's a really little old me. And that's why she testified on April 26th that Paul invited her, because Krusty told her. I don't think she's ever spoken to Paul. That's my guess. I don't think she's ever spoken to Paul O'Grift. I think Krusty just set the whole thing up. I think she's the mastermind of all of this, all of it. Okay?
Aiden's in enough hot water as it is, so I doubt that he's able to say this. But I think Paul has been using Krusty to try and get Karen's bail revoked. There's nothing he would love more than another perp walk. For Paul and the Commonwealth, this is a PR battle. It's not about somebody's life and going to prison for the rest of their life. It's about PR. Anyway, wouldn't it just be weird if Paul O'Keefe's phone data was also part of the evidence in Aiden's case? And we somehow find out through that evidence that Paul was the one who had John's car repaired, and that Paul was the one who got the girls all together in the family Discord, and that Paul was the one who invented the whole idea of getting Karen Reid's bail revoked by getting Turtle Boy linked to her with his witness intimidation charges. I ain't saying that's the case. I'm just saying, wouldn't it be weird?